Well, good morning, Dr. Briggs.
Good morning.
We have a couple of folks that on our board that may be here just in a couple of minutes, but we'll go ahead and get opened up, try to be on time with you as well. Thanks for your patience with us, and thanks for meeting with us this morning. I'll introduce myself. I'm the board chair, Chris Pass, here with Blount County School System. Mrs. Erica Moore, one of our board members here with us. Joe Lindsay, board member here with us as well. And John Lowe, board member here with us as well. Miss Danny McPherson is our administrative assistant here with the school system. And so we want to welcome you this morning. Thanks for taking this time to be with us. Our goal will be this morning to spend about an hour and 30 minutes with you. We've got a series of questions that we want to give you opportunity to share with us. And during that, we look forward to your response to those and get to know you better and your perspective. And we look forward to this time that we have together with you. Do you any questions or things that we want to share opening up?
No, not off the bat. I'm just excited to be with you all and looking forward to this opportunity to be in the space with you.
Well, all right, Dr. Briggs. We're going to get started then just with our questions, just going around the board table here as we begin, and we'll open that with that first question. We have three general questions, Dr. Briggs, we want to open with, and I'll ask Miss Erica to open us with that first one.
Awesome.
So we've all had time to read your resume, and it is extensive. We know a little bit of something about you. Is there something you'd like to tell us that's not on your resume?
Yeah. I will say that my resume can capture my deep commitment to creating equitable environments, even during extraordinary challenges. So there was a graduation incident at Baraboo High School where I was confronted by an angry parent, and this demonstrates my this commitment and my commitment. When a parent rushed the stage during what should have been a celebratory moment, I maintained professional composure. Despite experiencing genuine fear, my immediate focus wasn't on myself, but on protecting the ceremony's dignity for graduates and continuing with minimal disruption. Like that was really, really important to me. This balance of personal resilience and student-centered focus defines my leadership approach. My philosophy, really centers on the triangle of love, which is acceptance, appreciation, and understanding, which guides my responses even in a crisis moment and forms the foundation for creating environments where everyone feels valued.
Thank you for your response.
Yeah.
Dr. Briggs, what would you do to create an atmosphere in the schools that would lead to that next level of education excellence for all students?
Oh man, this is one of my favorite questions to kind of speak to, because in districts that I've been in, I've implemented a comprehensive multi-level systems of support process that is addressing both academic and social emotional needs, combining systemic structure with genuine heart. Like the structure includes data-driven decision-making through collaborative teams, universal data summits to identify patterns and needs, professional learning communities to support teacher growth, assessment action teams to target interventions effectively, and then also student study teams to address individual challenges. The heart comes from consistently applying that love triangle that I talked about, which is really accepting, understanding, and appreciating, for what every student and staff member, brings to the table. And I firmly believe that educational excellence isn't achieved in isolation. Like nobody can do this work alone. So it requires building strong relationships, across the entire educational community. When we really engage students, families, teachers, administrators, board members, and community partners collaboratively, we create environments where all students can flourish academically, socially, and emotionally. And this isn't just theoretical. I've seen the powerfulness of this impact of the multi-level systems of support, which really unpacks, academically and socially emotionally for kids and families and staff all together. So that's what I would really, lean into is really having that done with fidelity and with intention and purpose to make sure we're supporting kids and giving kids what they need as well as families, along in that process with staff.
Well, thank you for that, Dr. Briggs.
Yep.
Good morning, Dr. Briggs. I just wanted to ask you this question. What do you consider to be the major strengths that you would bring to this position?
Oh, man. I think I bring a unique combination of like systems thinking and authentic relationship building that allows me to implement meaningful change across the district. And when I say meaningful change, I don't mean, change just for change's sake. I think about the graduation incident and, that incident demonstrates this duality in the moment of crisis. I maintain composure and professionalism despite, a personal fear. While afterwards, I systemically address both immediate, needs when you think about security and communication. And then I also thought about the long-term improvements when we think about safety protocols and grievance procedures. So, my strengths include authentic crisis, leadership that allows sound decision-making under pressure, systems thinking, which demonstrated through developing comprehensive multi-level systems of support frameworks, and equity-focused decision-making that addresses, who voices are centered and which solutions, work for all students, which might be different, things for different groups of students. And you think about the change management expertise that balances structural shifts, with cultural alignment. And also I would say the commitment to Dr. King's social change philosophy. Like I really think it's important that as a leader, I think about these 6 steps that really help me be the leader that I am in any situation. And I think about the integration of information gathering, education, a personal commitment, while negotiating, things to lead us to direct action. And then the inevitable of reconciliation. There are times that things will happen or things happen before me that we have to figure out how to reconcile those things. So these strengths enable me to create environments where students truly thrive, academically, socially, and emotionally while building sustainable environments that outlast any individual initiative.
Hello, Dr. Briggs.
Hey, how are you doing this morning?
What steps will you take to maintain open lines of communication with staff and the community, especially in times of crisis or rapid change?
Absolutely. No, that's a great question. My approach to crisis communication, balance preparation and adaptability. I feel like I really have to establish multiple proactive communication channels, like thinking about it through a digital lens. So you think about social media, you think about in print, you think about in person, before crisis occur. Like I don't want to have a crisis occur and then, we got to think about all these things. So creating a foundation of trust that proves invaluable during challenges. I center, equity and communications by explicitly asking whose voices are centered and which perspectives might be missing. So I want to make sure that I'm really leaning into who's not in the space, making sure that their voices, are heard. And I practice radical transparency about both what we know and what we don't know. I think it's important to share what we know, but then also important to share that more information could be coming based on things that we learn, along the way, and I used the graduation incident again, along with, having a fatal car accident, having a flamethrower incident within the community that involved staff members. I worked closely with the board to communicate, clearly about what happened, and then immediate security steps and long-term prevention plans that I created to structure feedback loops to listen and have listening sessions and surveys, ensuring communication flows both ways. I don't like to just feel like what I say go. I want to make sure that this is a two-way communication conversation that we're having with communication, and I also tailor messages for diverse audiences. I want to make sure that, if there's someone that needs particular strategies to understand our communication, whether that's it's translated into different languages, having multiple formats for accessibility, despite using mass communication channels when necessary, I maintain personal connections. I want to make sure that, making myself available for media interviews after taking personal, time to process, and meeting individually with concerned parents and community members. This comprehensive approach really helps me maintain trust during difficult circumstances by making stakeholders feel like we're in partnership rather than just recipients of information.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next question I'm going to ask is, how do you ensure transparency and clarity when communicating complex or challenging issues to parents, staff, and the wider community?
Oh man, this is a good one too. I think communicating, complex issues, like they effectively require both strategic planning and genuine respect for the stakeholders that you are working with, and also their intelligence. I layer information appropriately, providing high level summaries with options to access deeper details. I want to make sure that for particular groups, and that's a part of me getting to know different individuals, making sure that the communications that and how I'm delivering those communications are understood, clear, concise, and also open and honest with individuals. My initial, statement of acknowledging, what happened at the graduation, incident, it outlined immediate actions. It was followed by my and more detailed communications about long-term security improvements. I use accessible language, without oversimplifying, right? Avoiding educational jargon. Like I don't want to use, any acronyms or anything like that in the process, because not everybody's going to understand, some of that jargon and the complexities that come behind that. So I employ, multiple communication channels. I recognizing, different stakeholder preferences, and I create a safe space for questions. Hosting community forums where people can ask questions. And I don't want them to just be questions. I want them to be tough questions too. Like I want people to feel like they can ask questions and not feel like they're going to be made to look a certain way by way of the questions that they may ask. And I want to enhance the understanding through visual representation. Like the love triangle. I want people to have diagrams of our multi-level systems of support framework graphics. I want them to understand not only through words, but also through visuals to understand that transparency. And importantly, I acknowledge tensions and trade-offs, rather than pretending complex issues, have simple solutions. I want to invite, stakeholders to the tables to understand their thinking and their processing. This approach has built trust even around challenging issues by respecting community members and their intelligence while making complex information, accessible to them all.
Thank you.
Yep.
Dr. Briggs, when we discuss strategies and how you build trust and maintain strong relationships with staff, parents, stakeholders in the community, can you think back and give an example where those strategies that you have applied have been effective and the outcomes?
Yeah. I will say that one of the first Building trust requires both systemic approaches and authentic personal connections. I consistently demonstrate, the love triangle. And when I think about that love triangle again, I think about that acceptance, understanding, and appreciation in all interactions. I lead with appropriate vulnerability. I balance transparency about challenges with professional boundaries. After the graduation confrontation, I acknowledge my personal fear during the incident alongside my commitment to learning from it. I maintain visible presence, in schools and community spaces, creating opportunities for, informal conversations beyond formal communication. I don't want people just to always see me through a formal lens, but also knowing that I'm human, that I'm a person. And I ensure that, promises made are promises kept, communicating proactively when circumstances necessitate adjustments. I apply my decision-making framework to ensure that individuals that need to be at the table are at the table and they're part of those decision-making processes, so that if they're going to be impacted by that it's not just the loudest voices that are, hearing are being heard. But these strategies have provided remarkably effective during the graduation incident response. Despite the shocking nature of that confrontation, our community rallied, together because of the previous established trust relationships. The board immediately issued a statement supporting me and condemning the parents' behavior and actions. Staff members reached out with, messages of solidarity. Media coverage remained, large, to really cover such an incident that stood out, and we really believe we could continue to create a positive culture and of context. But most importantly, parents expressed confidence in how we handled the situation, because they really believed that we were making some great strides in their experiences, in our commitment to student safety and well-being.
Thank you for answering in that.
Yeah, I think you might have skipped the number there, but that's okay. I was ready.
I was just going to tell you how perfect I am, but I just ruined that.
I'm sorry. Pardon my technical difficulty here. The question is, if you would tell us about a difficult decision you had to make that affected multiple stakeholders, and how did you ensure that your decision was both fair and impartial?
Yeah. Upon becoming the superintendent in Baraboo, I inherited like a curriculum crisis where Bridges math and wit and wisdom, our literacy materials, had been implemented without proper teacher preparation, right? So I faced a difficult decision, and either to revert back to the previous curriculum material, or and with that previous material, it's been collected and it's also been discarded. So at this point, I had to find a way forward with programs, teachers felt unprepared to deliver, right? So this affected numerous stakeholders. It overwhelmed teachers, students potentially receiving substandard instruction, concerned parents, and then the district leadership needing to maintain curriculum integrity, right? So I applied our decision-making framework by first conducting teacher listening sessions. I wanted to really hear from teachers as I came on, as this was a huge, I want to say, possible crisis for them. I wanted to hear from them, and learning that they weren't resistant to curriculum itself, but deeply concerned about inadequate training. I reached out, directly to the curriculum developers to arrange accelerated professional development, ensuring expert, perspectives, on the implementation. I evaluated solutions through an equity lens too. Recognizing poorly implemented curriculum would disproportionately impact all of our students. I maintain, transparency by acknowledging implementation flaws while focusing on solutions rather than to point fingers at people prior to me or people that were still there with me. And the resulting approach included comprehensive professional development, collaborative planning time for implementation challenges, and then regular assessment checkpoints. Throughout this process, I validated concerns while expressing confidence in teachers' abilities to adapt with proper support. I wanted to make sure that the teachers felt supported. I wanted to make sure that they were heard. I wanted to make sure that, the things that were done did not cause us to lose sight of the big picture. And that's making sure that students were at the center, but not at the center without teachers having the appropriate things that they needed to be effective. So I think all in all, it was, by centering those most affected, while keeping students' outcomes as our North Star, I think we ensured fairness despite challenging circumstances, while ultimately turning a potential crisis into a growth opportunity for the district.
Just a follow-up to that, you mentioned, would you distinguish for me between educational material and curriculum?
Yeah. So there's really isn't a difference between the two. I just know that in some states, curriculum may be like the material that's being used to educate our kids. So I sometimes will say both of those, like the curriculum, but then I'll speak to the curriculum being the material that's being utilized to educate our kids, because at the state and our states, every state, we have standards. And depending upon where you are, you may hear that the standards are is considered the curriculum, while the material of like Briggs math or wit and wisdom is considered the material to help us reach those standards. So depending upon where you may be, you may hear, curriculum, which may represent the material, or you may hear curriculum talk and that material is that as well. So that's what that is.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dr. Briggs, if I could follow up just on that for a moment to ask you to share a little bit more about roughly how long ago that was that you went through that curriculum reintroduction and adjustment, and looking back at that, what you see, how that progressed going forward and improvement-wise and effectiveness for students and staff.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. I would say that was about 4 years ago. It was 4 years ago. But it took us about a year to kind of get solidly footed on solid ground, making sure that staff had the professional development. We actually went to 6 PD days, from 2 PD days to 6 PD days, to ensure that we were able to make sure that our staff received the appropriate professional development that was needed. Now, you usually would say that it takes 3 to 5 years for there to be a considerable change in like your state report card. And by way of doing what we did, I believe this had a huge impact on us moving our state report card from meets few expectations to meets expectations in just 2 years. So in those 2 years, 3 years right away, we did those trainings. We really had our staff, on board, and they saw the dividends of that structure being put in place, the coming in and having the professional developers kind of come back out to train us, because the training that they were supposed to receive, they were receiving virtually prior to me getting there, to whatever level they tried to receive it, but it was also kind of COVID, a window in which COVID was there. So when I got there, I worked with the developers to come back to us, and they actually did it free of charge, which was really cool. And over the last 3 years, we've seen some great growth, not only in our report card, but also our behavior referrals decreasing as well. And that played a huge part, I think, in taking the stance that we took about ensuring the curriculum, preparation and development.
Thank you for that follow-up.
Yeah, no problem.
You got anything? Anybody else? Good?
Pardon me?
How do you ensure that the instructional practices and curriculum in the district meet the diverse needs of students and align with educational standards?
Did we jump another question?
Did you not hear me? Oh,
Okay. So we're on number 5 now, right?
yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I got you. Cool. That question was, how do we ensure that the instructional practices and curriculum in the district meet the diverse needs of students and align with educational standards? That's the correct question we're on, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. I would first off say, like, it's really ensuring that instructional practice and curriculum, serve all students. And it requires systemic approaches centered on, our multi-level systems of support, which provides the structure to identify curriculum effectiveness gaps. So when I think about our multi-level systems of support, there's so many things that go into it, from our data collection, our data summits, our professional learning communities, our student advisory, our student study teams, and our assessment action teams. I built this collaborative professional structures like our professional learning communities, which is focused on examining student outcomes. They're segregated by demographic factors. Like, that's a really important piece for our staff, allowing teachers to collectively identify and address instructional gaps, right? If our teachers don't know what those instructional gaps are, they won't know how to adjust, their instruction, what I'm saying? So while maintaining rigorous standards alignment, I ensure curriculum decisions prioritize student engagement and real world relevance, balancing compliance with effectiveness. And I hope that we create opportunities for diverse, stakeholders, including students, families, and community members, to provide curriculum feedback. We don't want to just deliver things each and every day, and then it's over time not having feedback to determine whether the particular curriculum material that we're using is having an impact on student growth. Because even the best curriculum fails without proper implementation. So I ensure teachers receive, ongoing job embedded support through targeted professional development. And this approach has shown tangible results, in my previous leadership roles, significantly reducing behavior referrals while simultaneously improving academic outcomes by ensuring curriculum and instruction truly serves all of our students, not just particular groups, but all of our students.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, our next question is, how would you ensure that the community stays informed about both the successes and challenges of the school system in a timely and a transparent manner?
That's a great question as well. I think transparent communication is about both successes and challenges, and it builds on essential community trust. Like, I don't think the community will trust us if we're not giving them, both sides of the pie. I do establish predictable communication cycles. So when you think about predictable communication cycles, you're thinking about monthly newsletters, quarterly data updates, and annual state of the district reports, which are really big for stakeholders to know over a year what has kind of taken place, what's happening, what can we expect, where have we come from in terms of growth. And rather than just cherry picking, only positive information, I present balanced pictures of both progress and improvement areas, building credibility through honesty. When sharing district data, I ensure it's presented in formats understandable to non-educators, with clear explanations of implications and next steps. We want to make sure that we're balancing the technology use for timely updates with face-to-face opportunities for deeper engagement around complex topics. I created clear feedback channels as well for the community. I want to make sure that the community is able to ask questions, also bring those concerns to the table and helping them understand that this is a two-way communications flow, and as demonstrated during the graduation confrontation, the board, of education and I communicated promptly, during the challenging situation, sharing, what we knew, what we were doing, and when more information will be available. There was a lot of unknowns at times, and we have to be able to say that there are some things that are unknown right now, but stay tuned. More information is kind of coming as well, and I recognize that the different stakeholder groups have varying communication preferences. There are some who may want to receive a text. There's some that may want to receive an email. There's some that may want to just see it, on social media. So it's making sure that we have different formats in which we are also communicating these things through to kind of help people kind of understand the information, know this is what's kind of happening. And this commitment to transparent communication builds community trust. Like, that is demonstrating respect for our stakeholders, right to accurate information. We want them to have accurate information so that they're not sharing something that's like a rumor or something that's not just half truths or anything like that. So we want to make sure that we're building that trust and providing for them, accurate information in that process to continue to contribute to our positive culture that we want to establish.
Got a quick follow-up question.
Yeah.
Did you have a communications person, or was there a team?
Yeah, there's a team. So I have a director of communications who is phenomenal and worked really closely with myself and the board in that process. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dr. Briggs, when we think about school budgets, can you look back in your experience and describe what that looked like for you in your participation in developing and administering a comprehensive school budget, and what steps you've taken to make sure that the budget is aligning with the district's goals and priorities?
Yeah, I want to say this first, because I think this is important to add to just all of these questions. There's a level of collaboration that takes place. So I don't sit in a corner and answer all these things by myself. So you may hear me speak to these things because I am a big part of them, but nothing that I've done has been done without collaboration or involving others in those conversations and processes. So I just wanted to add that because of particularly thinking about that previous follow-up question with the communications. Like, I've always been very collaborative and supportive of others to make sure I have their voices at the table as well. So on to number 7 here. So one of the most important things when you're thinking about a budget is really analyzing the state biennial budget. It's like the first thing that you really lean into. And then you also are thinking about analyzing the district's needs versus wants. And I'm not a wants guy. I'm not a wants leader. I'm more of what do we need to do and how are all the things that we're spending our funding on impacting our strategic plan, our growth for students, our development of staff, and also supporting our community in the ways that they need to be supported. So, I approach the budget development, as a powerful tool for advancing district priorities. So leaning into our strategic plan as much as possible and what makes the most sense rather than merely an administrative requirement. Like those requirements don't equal what's going to be what's best for our students and staff and community. I ensure that the budget decisions directly support our strategic goals and also our multi-level systems of support framework implementation. Allocating resources, based on priorities rather than traditions. There are some traditions that people really want to make sure that we maintain. Those are things that I really feel are gathered in conversation, but also wanting to know how do they impact what the board has approved for our strategic plan and priorities to assist with the outcomes that we're shooting for. And then I also apply our equity lens to financial decisions by examining budget proposals, the impact on vulnerable populations, ensuring resources address opportunity gaps. I simplify complex financial information through clear communications. I want, the community to understand that, this is what it means to follow the particular procedures and policies related to our budget development and inclusive processes, within our stakeholders' understandings and meaningful engagement with our stakeholders as well. So periodically, I may, say, or we may come to an agreement that we're going to do a zero-based, budgeting approach, for a particular window to kind of support our budget being balanced, in the end, which requires justification of all expenditures, based on student outcomes, the impact, rather than incremental adjustments. We may come back and make adjustments, but I want to make sure that the things that we're spending are having a legitimate impact on what students' needs are. And then also, I would say leaning into establishing, regular monitoring protocols, tracking expenditures against expected outcomes, allowing mid-year adjustments when programs aren't delivering anticipated results. If we have goals set and we're spending funds on those goals and we're not seeing, any directional change, it's coming back to the table, looking at our data, looking at our protocols and determining if this is something that we should be putting, funds to or making adjustments to that, and to maximize, available resources. I identify grant opportunities as well. I'm a believer in if there are grant opportunities out there, really leaning into those grant opportunities and partnering with the community to supplement traditional funding streams, particularly for innovative, equity-focused programs. I build stakeholder, financial literacy through opportunities for staff and community members to learn about it. So with collaboration with our business services manager, we also did, literacy, conversations. So financial literacy conversations and sharing information around our budget, why it was so important to understand the budget, not only for the community, but also for our staff, needing our staff to really understand, the budget aspect of things as well, so that they are in tune to why certain things are being allocated and done. And this comprehensive approach has ensured financial resources directly advance our educational mission. Like, this has really helped us, have a balanced budget over the last 4 years to support, our taxpayers and knowing that we're being fiscally responsible with any and everything that we spend.
Thank you for that response. Dr. Briggs, I wanted to ask you as a follow-up into that.
Yep.
As I'm listening to what you've shared with us, what would you say, working through the district's budget, what would you say were one of the biggest challenges? Obviously, having enough budget there is an important aspect. What have you encountered that's always been one of the bigger challenges to make work in your budget?
Yeah, I would say, I don't want to say that this is a really big challenge, but it is. I mean, like 80 to 85% of your budget is usually staffing. So when you think about when you don't have the number of students where the state is giving you the funding per student, but you don't have enough students to have the number of staff members that you want, or you feel like you should have, you have to make decisions to reduce staff too, right? So I would say that's probably been one of the biggest, because you're also causing people to feel a certain way, but we also have to maintain a solid and sound budget, and knowing that we may not have a teacher because our budget doesn't allow for it, causes great, I'm going to say, harm in in some people's eyes as it relates to teachers, as it relates to administrators, because if you don't have the students in the space to teach, you may not be able to utilize the funding that you want to, the way you want to utilize those funds to provide an additional educator, because the enrollment doesn't allow for it. So I
Thank
would say
you.
that's one big piece. And then I would also say, even really thinking about, possible capital maintenance projects that you have to maintain buildings, and ensuring that our buildings are up to par to serve our students and our staff with instruction and engagement, and sporting events even. So capital maintenance is also a big one.
Thank you for going a little more in depth into that question for us, Dr. Briggs.
Yeah, for sure.
Dr. Briggs, obviously long-term strategies are very important and a critical success factor. So when you're developing long-term strategies, how do you ensure that the district remains adaptable to changes in policy, technology, and educational trends? And how do you plan on engaging key stakeholders, including students, parents, staff, and the school board in this process of long-term planning?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think developing adaptive long-term strategies while meaningfully engaging stakeholders requires balancing clear vision with strategic flexibility. Like, not much is always going to go as planned. So you have to be able to, create, and think about that living strategic plan, right? And making sure that strategic plan is a living and guiding document, like our North Star, and with clear long-term goals by regularly reviewing those cycles, adapting to changing circumstances. Exemplified by our multi-level systems of support. We know that our multi-level systems of support is a continuous school improvement process and a plan where we are constantly adopting and adapting to different approaches of things in providing resources, providing communications and things of that nature. So I would say that I would want to establish systems monitoring, emerging educational research, and also policy changes and technological developments to anticipate rather than merely reacting and shifting. I don't want to be reacting to things. I want to be as proactive and innovative up front, knowing that certain things could change, but also knowing that we have to create a meaningful stakeholder participation, right? And have opportunities for those groups. So it may look like we're having student, staff, and parent advisory committees where they are providing information to the superintendent. So in my previous district, I established, student, staff, and parent advisory committees to the superintendent, which provided a great level of involvement, great level of understanding of, number one, how leadership works, but then also some of the concerns and challenges that they had around innovation, around our technology usage, around different policies that we had that they felt could and should be different. And having those committees really provided a great sense of understanding from their perspective. We also have authentic leadership roles that our staff play within our buildings. We have building leadership teams. We wanted to make sure that we provided accessible parent and having parent participation and accommodating various schedules, and creating things in languages that support families, and also our students for that matter. And then you think about, for staff, there was the professional learning communities, and those professional learning communities really leaned into helping staff understand, what their focus should be within, channeling their input around students, and also the workshops that we have that support, our board members. Each year, there was 3 board workshops that we leaned into to explore emerging trends, for board members. And in that process, not only did we have those workshops, but I met with, board members, met with the president of the board every week, met with the other board members, every other week, just to keep them abreast of things as they're happening, and innovatively talking about things that may be coming down the pike, or things that we need to possibly even think about and consider. So it really allowed for stakeholder involvement, and participation in a lot of things there. But I also leaned into, you heard me speak earlier around Dr. King's 6 steps of social change. That framework, it ensured changes are thoroughly understood and embraced. I want to make sure that, gathering information, making a commitment, having the education that we need to have to do these things, while also engaging in discussions, and then also leaning into some direct actions, really means a lot to this particular question, I think, because beyond specific initiatives, I want to invest in developing organizational adaptive, capacity through professional development. I want to make sure professional development's there, collaborative structures are there, and innovative, valuing culture. I want to make sure that the culture that we want to create, the people that are in our community related to the cultures that they bring, that they are valued, right? I want to center, equity, in change processes by ensuring that, not when I talk about equity, it's race related, but when I think about our students with disabilities, I think about our, LGBTQ plus community, I think about our low socioeconomic status families. I want to make sure that they understand, the vulnerability of our population, and not really think about it through a lens of certain people don't matter as an approach. I want to make sure we have a balanced approach to maintain strategic direction while remaining, responsive to emerging needs and opportunities within our district, and also within the stakeholders that we partner with.
Thank you, Dr. Briggs.
What process do you use to determine whether a change is truly necessary for the school or district? And how do you gather input and make decisions?
Awesome. Well, I think you guys have heard me just briefly speak to a decision-making framework. I really believe that a decision-making framework is fundamental to, this question, and how you go about doing things within a district. And what that decision-making framework looks like, it's understanding what needs are we trying to address, for whom, and then by when. This ensures changes respond to genuine needs rather than trends. Again, I triangulate, multiple pieces of evidence, by way of whether it's quantitative, metrics, qualitative feedback, or research-based practices, to make sure that we are getting that comprehensive understanding for potential change, areas. So making sure that those things are all really at the table and in the space and understanding before we really move on to specifically seek, input from, our stakeholders, most impacted by the potential changes. Particularly, in many cases, there's a lot of historically marginalized groups out there that may be within our district that we really want to gather, information from, and that may be, students, with disabilities, low socioeconomic status, and other groups that we would really have to have their perspective and bring their perspectives, to the tables that might otherwise be missed. And rather than presenting, predetermined solutions, I engage stakeholders in examining evidence and collectively developing approaches, building both better solutions and stronger implementation buy-in. Like, we want to make sure we have buy-in from those that are really leaning into the process, and also impacted and will be impacted by the decisions that will be made. And before finalizing decisions, I assess whether, the proposed changes, might harm vulnerable populations or inadvertently reinforce existing inequities or harm, in the space. And when possible, I want to make sure that I'm implementing some level of a pilot. Like, if we have, ample amount of time, I want to make sure that we get some kind of data additionally that can help us understand whether something would work for us or not. So making sure that we do some kind of pilot cycle if we need to, maybe testing significant changes, on a smaller scale before taking it to the larger scale, and gathering that data to refine approaches, right? Giving us an opportunity to make some adjustments along the way, because we know in the real world, there could be some drastic impact. And then this methodological process, that I think we lean into ensures changes purposefully, and respond to genuine needs rather than external pressures or trending topics, while building collective ownership through meaningful stakeholder involvement from identification through implementation, increasing both quality, of the decisions and sustainability to improve the decisions that we would make, and utilizing the decision-making framework to do that also.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're on number 10 now. So we're getting there. So I've always been one to kind of leverage people's gifts and talents. I'm very well aware that there are going to be people who give you 150%. There's going to be people who give you 100, and then you got your 70% people, and then you got some other people who are a little bit down beneath that. So my question for you is, what have you done in your current position to ensure every employee is effective, and how do you determine which employees should be retained? And with that question, I'll ask whether they have tenure or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I always say that I don't think it matters whether you are a veteran teacher or you are a newcomer fresh off the block of receiving your certification. The expectations of educating our kids, creating a culture of belonging, love, care, and engagement is the expectation that every single staff member have, not just teacher. I don't want to look at this through just a classroom teacher thing. I want to look at this through a lens of directors, assistant superintendents, superintendent. It's really critical that those few things are really known. So then when I really think about, like my approach to employee effectiveness, that balance, it's clear on accountability with supportive growth. We want to make sure that we're recognizing, our most, employees that we recognize that most employees want to be successful. I don't think any of them wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to go in and give only 60% today, or I'm going to go in and give 50%. I don't think that happens. I strongly believe that circumstances kind of prevails sometimes for staff when they're in situations or they feel like something's not being done the way that they feel like it should be done. But in the midst of that, I want to make sure that we're developing a comprehensive, role-specific performance framework. In most states, there's an educator effectiveness evaluation tool that's utilized. And I know in our state, we have an educator effectiveness tool that we use from the state for each position that we have. And we utilize that where our, principals are going into classrooms. They may do what we call formal and informal evaluations, where there's two formal evaluations that they do. And then there's like three, we call them mini evaluations, where they're like 15-minute mini observations where you go into a class. But a full, which is a formal, is you're going into the classroom, you work with that particular teacher to look at a lesson that they're going to be delivering on a particular day. And you obviously have questions. You want to know more about that lesson so that you know what to expect when you go into that class. But we're also about providing feedback. If educators are not getting feedback around things that they can do differently or better, that's something that we have to lean into and make sure that we're making those adjustments to ensure that feedback is, number one, useful. Number two, that it's really helpful in terms of what direction the teacher may need to lean into to show growth for themselves. But I also think it's, really about, just like our students, we want to differentiate, feedback. We want to differentiate what we see from, teachers when we deliver our feedback to ensure that the teachers receive support tailored to specific growth. So if there's a teacher that we know is not having the best outcome for students, we want to provide mentors. We provide mentors, I provide instructional coaches, and then we also consider what does targeted professional development look like for an individual in a particular area. So we really provide those things so that if we have to get to a place of, a performance improvement plan, we've provided everything that we needed to provide, and this person just still wasn't making the growth that they needed to make. And really thinking about that through an effectiveness issue, and then we implement those structures for that improvement plan, and with clear expectations so that it's still supportive, with resources and specific timelines in that process. And then when determining retention, I would say, we focus primarily on student outcomes, and the impact and alignment with core values, particularly commitment to the continuous improvement process, going back to our multi-level systems of support, how well is this person, fostering a collective responsibility culture, where all staff, see themselves responsible for effectiveness through collaborative structures like our professional learning communities. This balances the approach, that recognizes that most employees intrinsically, really do want to be effective and will become, if they have the appropriate expectations, feedback, and support, from the system. So regardless of whether you are tenured or not, there's expectations that we have to live by to ensure that we're having the outcomes for kids that we've identified in our strategic plan, we've identified in our continuous school improvement plans, that we've identified in our professional learning communities, that we want to see a change and we need to see a change for the betterment of our kids, whether they want to go off into college or they want to go off into different careers. We want to make sure that they have that opportunity by putting the best educators in front of them. And then if our educators are not living up to that, we want to make sure that we're supporting those educators in every way possible before moving to not retaining.
Thank you.
Yep.
Dr. Briggs, as a follow-up on that 10th criterion question, can you think back over a decision and a process and experience that you've had where someone, staff, employee-wise, that was maybe someone you knew well or worked well with, for quite some time, that sort of thing, where you had to make a tough decision? Can you share experience in any of that?
Yeah, I can. There's a couple. I can speak to when I was a principal. There was a ESL teacher that we had who, her caseload wasn't large in any way, but we were also not seeing students, move from, like being a level 1, which is relatively low for our EL students in reading, writing, sounds, and all those things, to being a level 6. So we weren't seeing any movement. And I'm going to say over years, this wasn't just a 1-year thing, because it wasn't something that was brought to the attention until like I arrived. So it seems like every time I arrive somewhere, there's something that someone hasn't taken care of or held people accountable for. But when I think about this particular situation, we had students who could not, who did not really grow in a 3-year span within their English language. So from that perspective, I had the individual come in. I kind of had some data in front of me looking at years of growth. She had been there for, I think, about 7 years. This was really my 1.5 year point as I was able to take a look at data. And then from that data, I asked some questions. And those questions are along the lines of what kind of strategies are you putting in place to support students in growth. So we're looking at a kid that you've been with for the last 3 years. This particular kid is still where they were 3 years ago, which is not typical and it's not normal. So from that perspective, I had to lean into this particular teacher and speak to the lack of growth that these students were making, and then also go the route of putting a plan in place where this individual worked with our instructional coach. I also brought in a specialist from the University of Wisconsin who specialized in ASOP, which is in the lines of English language learners and their growth, to work directly with this person. So wanting to provide the resources for this individual to understand what the expectations are and where we need to go with kids. And even with all of those resources, this individual, felt like this isn't the type of position that she wanted to be in, anymore. So she made the decision to actually leave because she felt like she couldn't provide or follow those expectations. So that was one incident. And I would say another incident that I had, or situation, not incident, but situation, was I had a building principal who attended a professional development, and while at this professional development engaged in some disrespectful, inappropriate behaviors towards the facilitators, as well as some colleagues that were in the space. So from that professional development, the director of the actual training sends me an email while the principal is still at this training. And that very next morning, I ended up meeting with that principal, trying to get some understanding around what took place from her perspective around the situation. And from that, because of a previous evaluation around professionalism, I had to put a plan of improvement in place for this individual to make sure that we're seeing growth around professionalism. And it was considered progressive discipline that we needed to lean into to make sure we understood and she understood the expectations of moving forward, of what she needed to focus on, how she needed to focus on it, and by when that was going to happen. Now, we scheduled, biweekly meetings to check progress. We also checked with, the director. We have a secondary director that worked directly with this particular individual. And then we also brought in and hired a external coach for this individual to support them on their journey. And yet and still that didn't work for that individual either. And at the end of the year, that individual decided it was time for them to go because of being watched more and expecting what we expected from that individual.
Thank you for adding that additional response to that 10th question. That concludes the question series we have, Dr. Briggs. I want to share with you when we close in a few moments just how the process will go forward for us. Mm-hmm. But in the meantime, before we do that, we just want to open the floor for just a couple of moments here for any questions you might have for us.
Yeah, for sure. My first question for you all is, what are you most proud of about Blount County?
Blount County has just a wonderful environment to raise a family and communities. It's a very close-knit community of families. Just like I'm sure your part of the country as well, it's a growing part of the country, continuing to expand and progression and develop. But there are just really a great environment, a great community where people just make eye contact and say hello and help each other in this community. That's a great aspect of the community itself, I would say. Our school system, 21 great schools make up our district. We've got just a wonderful district here with a great history of a school system and district. I'm very proud of all that they've accomplished and continue to accomplish, as you know, in an ever-changing world and environment and the challenges that go along with that. I'll open this if anybody else wants to add to that, of course.
The one thing that I love about our school system is I always tell people we take care of the whole child. So some of our teachers, and I mean their mother and father are some of these students, because some of our parents have to work 2 and 3 jobs to be able to provide for their kids. So they take really good care of the kids here. And then I'd also say, we're really big on CTE programs here. We have a lot of honors courses for our children. And then we also have a big special needs population here that we take care of. We have the biggest one in the district. So when I tell you we take care of all children, we really do here. Awesome. It's a great school system. We have some great teachers, some great staff, and I know everybody's dedicated. You have people who have been here for 30 years or more, who are still proud to be here in our district. And our slogan and motto is Blount County Strong. And I'll tell you, it rings true to us every single day. So that's what I would say. It's been a joy to be here serving in this district. And I think that you would, really enjoy being here in this city. Because like Chris said, you could be in the store shopping and somebody will finish your sentence for you. Like, seriously. I've had times where I'm in my car. You know how sometimes you'll just act like you're, take a little nap in your car and somebody will come check on your car window just to make sure you're okay. Like, that's how they are around here. So just to give you a little bit of insight.
Yeah, that's really cool. Thanks for sharing that. I do have another question. What specific challenges are you hoping the new superintendent will address, or a new director will address?
Yes, Dr. Briggs, I don't know if you know or not, but we've just completed 2 audits of our school system. We did a human resource audit, and then we did a curriculum audit. And the results are just coming back, and they'll soon be made public to everyone. And certainly one of the things that I would expect from a director would be a strong leadership in moving us in the direction that this audit reveals we need to go in order to be the best we can be. So we need strong leadership, someone who can see the vision of what we can become and lead in that direction.
Gotcha.
Dr. Briggs, also, I would add to that, and I'm sure it's similar to your community as well, just the challenges post-COVID, 2025, educating students, parental involvement, and just there's so many social and cultural concerns and those things, helping our student population with behavioral counseling, those things, wherever there's a needs there. There are several challenges, I believe, to any district in those respects, and I think some of those are going to be very common to Blount County as well. The good news in that is, as we discuss that, as John just mentioned, there's a lot of great data coming back to help us take a look at where we are and what we can do to go to that next level. A lot of great things going on in Blount County schools, but always with any system, just as in any avenue of life, there's opportunity for improvement. And so those are the facets and the areas that we're excited and looking toward.
Okay, cool.
I would also add to that, just leadership is going to be key for us. Somebody who can guide our district well into the future. Because I'm looking for a superintendent who can be here to have some longevity. But I think also having a unifying message that brings everybody together, our parents, the stakeholders in the community, our teachers, is probably really what I'm looking for. Because we've had a lot of I don't know, maybe sometimes negative press that doesn't go our way sometimes, and just shifting. It's time to shift that message into the positive things that we have going on in our district. And I think to also really just get down to, because I've told people before, some of the stronger districts are usually going to be the ones that have parents involved and also their community involved in what's going on in education. And so just trying to figure out how to get all of us to work together as a team, because ultimately it's about our kids. It's about our children, and it's about their futures. So I think that if someone could come in and kind of just lead that way and guide us well into our future is what I'm looking for.
Cool. That sounds good. No, thank you. I'll leave it there with those questions. I think some of the other things that I had to ask, I think it was kind of responded to some degree. So next question will be just what are the next steps in the process?
Yes. Dr. Briggs, we have 6 candidates, including yourself. We have those scheduled for today, tomorrow, Wednesday, and then on Thursday. Our goal would be at the end of the day on Thursday, end of Friday, to be able to look at the top 3 candidates, we believe, where we are, and be reaching out to both the 3 that are going to the next level and also as well as applauding the 3 that don't make it to that next level and notify all 6. But at that point, it would be early next week, we believe, that we would be trying to schedule those 3 interviews with those 3 final candidates. And from that, be looking for guidance to that one that just really seems to be the candidate for Blount County Schools. Having said that, Dr. Briggs, if we come to that with you in these final 3, that one, of course, we would be inviting you down in person for that interview with us at that time.
Okay. Awesome. Well, awesome. Thank you all so much for inviting me in today. I really appreciate it.
Okay. Anyone else have any other questions or comments as we close? We can't thank you enough, Dr. Briggs, for such short notice to be able to meet with us this morning and take this time. And thank you for your responses and just doing a great job in interviewing with us. And we will look forward to the next steps of where these interviews go. And just thank you for the opportunity. Look forward to speaking to you again soon and hope you have just a blessed rest of the day.
Thank you all. Have an awesome rest of your day and week. And good luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take it easy.
Take care. Yeah, you too.